I should have realized something was amiss the moment I spotted that convoy of golf carts tearing across my back pasture at exactly 7:42 in the morning. 4 HOA board members, all decked out in those absurd matching windbreakers emblazoned with "Ridgehurst Heights HOA" across the back, were speeding toward their clubhouse, treating my private property like their own personal expressway. That's when they encountered the little surprise I'd prepared for them. A long row of commercial-grade tire deflation strips lay stretched across their unauthorized shortcut. The lead cart struck them first, and the sound was pure music to my ears. 2 tires burst instantly with a loud, sharp hiss that carried across the meadow. The second cart attempted to swerve, but still clipped the edge of the strips. By the time the third cart slammed on its brakes and managed to stop, it was already too late for the one behind it. 4 carts, 12 tires total, and one furious HOA president who was finally about to discover that her reign of terror over the neighborhood had come to an end. My name is Jake Morrison, and 3 years ago, I made what I believed was the wisest decision of my life. I purchased 5 acres of stunning Colorado land just beyond the reach of the Ridgehurst Heights HOA's jurisdiction. The property included a modest ranch-style house, a small barn, and most importantly freedom from the oppression of homeowners associations, or so I assumed. My land bordered the rear edge of their exclusive gated community, and my gravel driveway linked to the main county road in a manner that apparently made it a tempting shortcut to their clubhouse. The HOA president, a woman named Diane Hartwell, appeared to take my mere existence as a personal affront. She had that impeccably styled blonde hair that never shifted, even in a stiff breeze, and she wore pearls just to fetch her mail. From the very first day, she made it plain that she viewed my property as an unsightly blight dragging down their home values. It began with passive-aggressive letters complaining that my natural meadow was an unkempt disaster attracting pests. I disregarded them, since she held no authority over my land. Next came grievances about non-existent livestock supposedly causing noise pollution. I didn't own any animals at that point, yet the mere prospect that I might acquire some someday was apparently keeping her awake at night. She even sent me an official notice on HOA letterhead proclaiming that my property fell under their architectural review committee simply because it was visible from their community. My attorney got a solid chuckle out of that one, but Diane wasn't the sort to back down easily. She began circulating rumors that I intended to start a commercial pig farm. She rallied protests at town council meetings, insisting my land use was ruining their quality of life. She even attempted to persuade the county to rezone my property as residential only, which would have barred me from keeping any farm animals whatsoever. When all those efforts failed, she moved to more direct measures. One morning, I awoke to discover that someone had erected a chain link gate across my driveway overnight, not at the property boundary, but 20 feet onto my land. A brand new lock held it closed, and a laminated sign proclaimed it the property of the Ridgehurst Heights HOA. The sign claimed the gate was installed for security reasons to block unauthorized entry into their community. I contacted the sheriff right away. Deputy Coleman glanced at my property deed and confirmed I had full rights to remove it. I inquired about filing charges for trespassing and vandalism. He said, yes, absolutely, but recommended I document everything thoroughly first. So I set up trail cameras around the property and waited to see Diane's next move. It didn't take long. The following week, my cameras recorded Diane herself leading a procession of HOA board members straight through my back pasture. They were using it as a shortcut from the residential section to their clubhouse, having their travel time. When I confronted her with the video evidence, she didn't bother denying it. Instead, she asserted with a smug grin that my land had been abandoned before I purchased it, and that the HOA had established a prescriptive easement through decades of prior use. She quoted that old saying about possession being 9/10 of the law. I pointed out that I'd owned the property for 3 years and had records proving no such easement existed. She laughed dismissively and told me I couldn't possibly afford the legal costs to challenge the HOA in court. That was her gravest error. Diane went ahead and submitted an official complaint to the county, alleging I was deliberately obstructing access to a public thoroughfare. She insisted my driveway was in fact a community access road used by locals for decades, and demanded the county compel me to eliminate any obstacles and maintain the path for public use. What she hadn't anticipated was that I'd already researched the matter thoroughly. The county clerk, a kind fellow named Bob Hutchinson, retrieved the original property records dating back to 1952. Not only was there no public easement, but the documents explicitly stated that the access road was private property with no shared usage rights. Bob actually burst out laughing while reading Diane's filing. He told me that in his 30 years on the job, he'd never encountered anyone submitting such an obviously false claim with that level of arrogance. I retained an attorney named Sandra Pike, who specialized in property disputes and HOA overreach. She promptly dispatched a cease and desist letter to Diane and the entire HOA board. The letter detailed numerous violations, including criminal trespassing, vandalism, harassment, and submitting a fraudulent county complaint. It demanded they remove the gate within 72 hours and provide written confirmation that they would cease all use of my property. The reply we received was astonishing. Diane, responding on behalf of the board, argued that they regarded my property as an attractive nuisance, encouraging their residents to trespass. Therefore, she claimed, it was my duty to address their safety concerns by permitting supervised access during specified hours. Sandra laughed so hard she almost spilled her coffee. She declared she was going to frame that letter as the most absurd legal reasoning she'd ever encountered. While the attorneys geared up for the fight, I chose to handle things myself strictly within legal limits. Colorado law is quite explicit about a property owner's rights to defend their land against trespassers. After consulting both my attorney and the sheriff's department, I purchased some commercial-grade tire deflation devices. These weren't the flimsy spike strips from action films. These were professional-grade systems employed by government installations and high-security facilities. I also added motion-activated cameras, no trespassing signs every 20 feet, and vivid orange warning signs declaring that unauthorized vehicles would suffer tire damage. The signs were impossible to ignore, with letters 6 inches tall. I had even applied reflective tape to ensure they remained visible after dark. The morning of what I now refer to as the Great Deflation unfolded like a scene from a slapstick comedy. I was enjoying my coffee on the front porch when I heard the unmistakable whine of golf cart motors approaching from the rear of my property. The HOA was holding its monthly board meeting, and as predictable as ever, they opted for their unlawful shortcut across my land. I monitored the live feed on my phone as the convoy neared the deflation strips. The lead cart, piloted by Diane herself, didn't slow down at all. She was too engrossed in a phone conversation to register the prominent warning signs. The devices performed flawlessly. Her front tires deflated immediately with a piercing hiss. The cart jerked to a halt, forcing the following one to veer sharply and graze the edge of the strips. In under 30 seconds, all 4 golf carts were immobilized on my property, sporting a total of 12 flat tires. The ensuing pandemonium provided endless amusement. Diane leaped from her cart, shrieking accusations of terrorism and assault. One board member attempted to yank up the strips and sliced his hand on the jagged points. Another dialed 911, hysterically reporting that they were under attack. When Deputy Coleman arrived, he encountered 8 HOA board members clustered on my land beside their crippled vehicles. Diane rushed toward him, insisting I be arrested for attempted murder. She genuinely used those exact words. Coleman remained composed and inquired whether they had noticed the no trespassing signs. Diane dismissed them as irrelevant, asserting they possessed established usage rights. He then pointed to the specific warnings about tire deflation devices. She professed not to have seen them, even though she was standing mere feet from one. Coleman documented everything with photographs, capturing the 4 signs they had bypassed to access the strips. The sheriff's department issued criminal trespassing citations to all 8 board members. Diane protested that they couldn't possibly be trespassing on what she called a public road. Coleman retrieved his phone and displayed the county records I had forwarded him earlier that week. Her complexion shifted to a remarkable shade of purple. She switched tactics, arguing that even if the land was private, I had erected a perilous booby trap capable of harming innocent passersby. Coleman countered that the only route to the hazard involved deliberately trespassing beyond multiple explicit warnings. He further explained that tire deflation devices were entirely legal for private property protection in Colorado. Diane demanded to speak with his superior. Coleman grinned and radioed Sheriff Davidson, who was conveniently stationed nearby, anticipating precisely this scenario. Davidson arrived and patiently endured Diane's escalating tirade for roughly 10 minutes. She accused me of offenses ranging from attempted murder to domestic terrorism. She threatened lawsuits against the sheriff's department for failing to safeguard them, and even vowed to contact the governor's office. Davidson allowed her to vent until she exhausted herself, then serenely clarified that she and her board had engaged in criminal trespassing, that I had acted within my rights to secure my property, and that continued harassment toward me would lead to her arrest for stalking. He additionally warned that submitting false police reports constituted a crime, and her allegation of attempted murder might warrant charges against her instead. The expression on her face was utterly priceless. Tow trucks showed up about an hour later to haul away the golf carts. Since the vehicles were on my land unlawfully, I exercised my full legal right to impound them at the owner's cost. Each tow ran $300, plus daily storage fees. The board members also bore the expense of replacement tires, approximately $200 per cart. The true blow, however, landed when their personal insurance providers rejected every claim, citing damage incurred during the commission of a criminal act. Diane attempted to shift the burden to the HOA's policy, but that carrier denied coverage as well, and issued a notice indicating they were evaluating policy cancellation due to the board's unlawful conduct. The scheduled HOA meeting that evening reportedly descended into chaos. Residents were livid that their leadership had been apprehended trespassing and had humiliated the whole community. The incident had already spread across the local news Facebook page under the headline "Local HOA Board Caught Trespassing Racks Up Thousands in Damages." Numerous homeowners rose to demand Diane's immediate resignation. She defended her actions by insisting she was safeguarding property values against my supposed plan to convert the land into a junkyard. When pressed for proof of any such activity, she offered none. She ultimately confessed that her goal had been to pressure me into selling to a developer who would construct additional homes, thereby boosting their values. The vote to oust Diane from the presidency passed 27-3, with only she and two loyal allies opposing it. Her difficulties, however, were far from over. The district attorney's office elected to prosecute charges of criminal trespassing, vandalism related to the unauthorized gate, and submitting a fraudulent county report. Her lawyers secured a plea agreement in which she entered a guilty plea to misdemeanor trespassing, accepted $5,000 in fines plus $3,000 in restitution to cover my attorney fees and security installations, completed 100 hours of community service, and received a restraining order barring her from approaching within 500 feet of my property. The judge remarked that she was fortunate I had not filed a civil lawsuit, which could have cost her tens of thousands more. As the sentence was read, Diane broke down in tears and required her husband's assistance to leave the courtroom.